a senior officer of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Strategic Planning Directorate, has defected to the West. He did not come empty-handed. In his possession, the complete operational playbook for Iran's nuclear first strike, codenamed the Isfahan Protocol. How will this revelation force an immediate and terrifying recalculation of global strategic defense? The global balance of power has been irrevocably altered. This is not speculation. This is not an estimate. This is a 512-page documented reality, now under frantic analysis by a joint task force of NATO and Israeli intelligence agencies. The Defector, a high-level IRGC colonel with 2 decades of service, was one of the core architects of the very doctrine he has now exposed. His identity is a closely guarded secret, but his access was not. The files detail a meticulously crafted plan for a preemptive, decapitating nuclear strike designed not for deterrence, but for a guaranteed win in a conflict Iran itself would initiate. The protocol operates on a simple, chilling premise: that a conventional war against the United States is unwinnable. Therefore, the only path to regime survival and regional dominance is a surprise, day-zero attack that cripples the West's ability to respond. The protocol is named for the city of Isfahan, home to Iran's primary nuclear fuel production and conversion facilities. This is not a coincidence. It is a signal. The very heart of Iran's nuclear program is the namesake for its most aggressive and dangerous military doctrine. The plan bypasses traditional ICBM-based delivery, which Iran's program is still developing and is closely monitored by foreign intelligence. Instead, the Isfahan Protocol relies on a triad of unconventional delivery systems. First, containerized nuclear devices. The plans specify the modification of standard 40-foot shipping containers designed to be smuggled into key Western ports aboard commercial vessels weeks or even months in advance. These are designated as harbor denial assets, intended to vaporize critical maritime infrastructure and irradiate entire coastlines. Second, repurposed civilian and military transport aircraft. The protocol details schematics for converting a small number of state-owned airline assets into rudimentary, one-way nuclear bombers. Their mission is to fly non-traditional, low-altitude routes over the Arctic or the Atlantic, evading the primary North American air defense networks which are oriented towards high-altitude missile threats. Third, and most concerning for regional stability, miniaturized warheads deployed on a new class of diesel-electric submarines. These are not the large, easily tracked nuclear submarines of major powers. They are small, whisper-quiet vessels designed for littoral combat, capable of clandestinely approaching coastlines in the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and the Eastern Mediterranean. This brings us to the first rehook. The primary targets of these submarine-launched devices are not cities, but the bedrock of the global economy. What does this mean for you? The Isfahan Protocol prioritizes the immediate neutralization of 70% of the world's oil and gas transit choke points. The first targets listed are the pumping stations and loading terminals at Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia, the world's largest offshore oil facility. A coordinated strike would also target the LNG terminals in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. The goal is economic Armageddon, a halt to the flow of energy that would send oil prices to over $500 a barrel in a matter of hours, triggering a global depression dwarfing anything seen in the last century. The plan is not simply military. It is a meticulously crafted, strategic economic attack. It seeks to break the West's will to fight by destroying its financial stability before a single soldier is deployed. The documents contain detailed economic modeling, predicting the precise level of market chaos required to cause systemic collapse within the G7 nations. The political triggers for activation are equally alarming in their clarity. The protocol outlines 3 specific red-line scenarios. The first is a confirmed, large-scale Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear facilities, whether successful or not. The mere attempt is considered an act of existential war, greenlighting an immediate, overwhelming response as outlined in the protocol. The second trigger is the imposition of what the document calls a total economic blockade. This is defined as coordinated international sanctions that effectively sever Iran from the global financial system and halt its ability to export any oil whatsoever. This moves sanctions from an act of diplomacy to a casus belli. The third trigger is the most ambiguous and therefore the most dangerous: a state of perceived imminent strategic encirclement. This is defined as the forward deployment of a U.S. carrier strike group into the Persian Gulf, accompanied by the massing of strategic bombers at regional bases like Al Udeid in Qatar and Diego Garcia. The IRGC's own assessment determines the point of no return. They would not wait to absorb a first strike. Let us pause for the second rehook. The documents contain a timeline. It is not a vague aspiration for the future. The Isfahan Protocol is graded on an internal readiness scale. According to the Defector's files, dated just 3 months ago, Phase 1, the weaponization of fissile material and the construction of the unconventional devices, is 95% complete. Phase 2, the clandestine pre-positioning of these assets, is estimated to be 60% complete. The documents include redacted shipping manifests and commercial flight plans, suggesting that several harbor denial assets may already be in or approaching Western ports. The question is no longer if Iran could execute such a plan, but how many of these systems are already in place. This forces a complete reevaluation of every threat assessment issued by Western intelligence for the past decade. The focus has been on centrifuges, enrichment levels, and missile test launches. Observable and verifiable metrics. The Isfahan Protocol reveals that Iran's true nuclear threat was designed to be invisible, operating under the cover of legitimate global commerce. The targeting priorities extend far beyond the energy sector. The secondary wave of attacks focuses on critical global infrastructure, not military bases, but the nodes that connect the modern world. The protocol lists specific subsea fiber optic cable landing stations, including the vital landing points in Marseille, France, and Boudé, United Kingdom, which handle a significant portion of the internet traffic between Europe, Africa, and Asia. The objective is to plunge the West into a digital dark age, severing communications and crippling financial markets that rely on microsecond data transmission. This is 21st century siege warfare, targeting the digital and economic foundations of society. The plan also details cyber warfare components, with sleeper cells and malware designed to activate simultaneously with the physical attacks, targeting power grids and water treatment facilities across North America and Europe. The psychological component is not ignored. The plan designates a tertiary set of targets selected purely for their symbolic value, intended to shatter public morale. These are not centers of government or military power. The Isfahan Protocol specifically names cultural landmarks. The documents include detailed blast radius and fallout models for a low-yield device detonated not in Washington, D.C., but near the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. Another scenario outlines a strike on the Vatican City during a major public address. This is a doctrine of total war, one that erases the line between civilian and combatant, between economic and military targets. It is a plan born from a position of perceived weakness, leveraging the asymmetric advantage of surprise and a complete disregard for established international norms of conflict. The Defector confirmed that the plan was approved at the highest levels of the Supreme National Security Council, with the final activation authority resting solely with the Supreme Leader. The immediate fallout from this leak is a frantic, undeclared intelligence war. Covert teams are now using the partial shipping manifests from the protocol to track down specific containers in ports around the globe. This is a race against time, with catastrophic consequences. Every container ship originating from or passing through the port of Bandar Abbas in the last 12 months is now considered a potential Trojan horse. The most terrifying section of the 512-page document is Appendix B, titled Post-Strike Retaliation Mitigation. The IRGC planners are not naive. They anticipate a massive, retaliatory strike from the United States and its allies. Their plan to survive this is not based on missile defense. It is based on a strategy of pre-planned, systematic human shields. The protocol mandates that upon activation, key military command and control bunkers and mobile missile launchers are to be immediately relocated to pre-designated civilian sites. The list is precise. It includes 112 schools, 67 hospitals, and 22 of the most significant historical and religious shrines in Iran, including the Tomb of Hafez in Shiraz and the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad. The calculation is as cynical as it is brilliant. It forces any retaliatory strike to choose between military ineffectiveness or committing what would be globally condemned as a war crime on a colossal scale, turning world opinion against the initial victim of the first strike. It is a strategy of poison pills, designed to make a response as politically and morally devastating as the initial attack. The protocol even contains pre-written propaganda campaigns and doctored media to be released through state and proxy channels the moment such a site is hit. The information from the Defector indicates that Iran has made a strategic choice. They have opted for a dead-hand deterrent, but one that is not meant to remain dormant. It is a loaded gun, held to the head of the global order, with a hair trigger defined by their own paranoid threat perceptions. Western defense posture has always been based on the assumption of rational actors and a desire to avoid mutual assured destruction. The Isfahan Protocol throws this assumption into the fire. It presents a clear and present threat from an actor that has already calculated the acceptable losses and has a plan that embraces, rather than avoids, a global conflagration. The core question for Allied defense planners is no longer, what would we do if Iran gets the bomb? The question is now, what do we do now that we know Iran has weaponized global commerce itself and has a detailed plan to burn the world down to save its own regime? The leaked documents show a critical vulnerability in the global supply chain, one that Iranian strategists have been planning to exploit for years. The protocol details how sleeper cells within the IRGC's Quds Force have been tasked with a mission that goes beyond mere logistics. They aren't just guarding the deployed assets. They are tasked with acquiring the final, critical components after the containers reach their destination ports. And this is where the conspiracy deepens into a terrifying abyss. The Defector revealed that the most sensitive materials, the triggers and neutron initiators for the radiological devices, were never risked on the open sea. They were sourced separately. The protocol contains encrypted annexes, detailing payments not to Hezbollah, but to shell corporations linked directly to rogue elements within Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence, the ISI. This isn't just an Iranian plan, it's a joint venture in global terror. Suddenly, the entire equation is different. Is Iran the true aggressor, or just the chosen delivery system for a far more shadowy player? Who is this silent partner pulling the strings? And what is their ultimate endgame? The entire intelligence apparatus of the West has been retasked. The hunt for containers is now secondary. The primary objective is a ghost hunt for a handful of couriers carrying the triggers. Individuals moving not through cargo lanes, but through first-class cabins and diplomatic channels, protected by the sovereignty of a nation long considered a troubled but necessary ally. The Isfahan Protocol, once thought to be the blueprint for Armageddon, is revealed to be something far more sinister. A feint, a disposable asset. Iran's regime, in its paranoid desperation, has been played. They are the gloved hand holding the radiological weapon, but the mind guiding it, the finger on the true trigger, belongs to a shadowy consortium of ideologues buried deep within the Pakistani state. Their endgame is not the preservation of the Iranian regime. Their goal is chaos, a cleansing fire. They seek to trigger an unstoppable sequence, an Iranian-initiated attack, a massive Western retaliation on Iran as a human shield, and the subsequent moral and political implosion of the Western alliance as the world recoils in horror. From the ashes, they believe a new world order will rise, one shaped by their radical, apocalyptic vision. Iran is simply the first sacrificial pawn in a global chess game we are only now beginning to comprehend. The race is now on two fronts. One is a conventional military operation on the high seas, visible and direct. The other is a desperate, clandestine war in the shadows, fought in airports, hotel lobbies, and back alleys, where a single missed handoff or a moment's hesitation could doom millions. The containers are the bombshells, but the triggers are the detonators. And while you can track a 200,000-ton ship from space, a lead-lined briefcase can pass through a terminal with a smile and a forged passport. The Isfahan Protocol was never just a threat. It was a delivery system for a much deeper ideological contagion. The true weapon isn't a dirty bomb. It's the cynical exploitation of our interconnected world, turning allies into question marks and our own moral codes into weapons against us. The clock is ticking, but we are no longer certain which clock matters most, the one on the ships or the one in the courier's pocket. The story doesn't end here. This is an evolving, ongoing crisis. The forces at play are complex, the alliances are shifting, and the truth is buried under layers of deception. To stay ahead of the narrative and understand the threats that are shaping our future, you need to stay informed. Stay vigilant. Subscribe to global_crisis_radar, because the next crisis is already in motion.